Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. In this video you may see someone you might be familiar with, someone called Brent Hall. He has a really good YouTube channel all about photography and he does a lot of stuff on wildlife. So if you're interested in having a look at his content, I'll put a link in the description box and have a look at his channel because he's a really good photographer. Anyway, I want to talk about some of the things he's addressed, talking about the RF 800mm lens and the Tamron 150-600mm.
It barely fits in the bag the way I have it set up. I have to set it a little bit diagonally, but it does fit, and it wouldn't fit if it was extended. So that's nice. One pro though, real quick, is the ring right here. Like most of the RF lenses, having this little extra control ring is really nice. I can set it to exposure compensation, which I love for wildlife. Being able to set this to exposure compensation is so great because I can put it in manual and I can have my shutter speed set to what I want. I can put it in auto ISO because I'm just not worried about what the ISO is going to do on this R5. And then I can make the control ring for my exposure compensation, which is fantastic because if I'm shooting that way where the sun is over here to my back and I'm shooting that way and the birds are in beautiful light, and then or whatever it is, the elk or whatever, and they go behind me or I've turned around and all of a sudden my subject is backlit, being able to crank the exposure compensation up on the fly is a game changer. It's so wonderful to have that ability. So I dig the control ring. So I guess I'll go over, talk about my thoughts for me personally, why I'm having or why I was having a struggle between which lens should I get, because I decided that I want more reach than my 400. I don't want to get the teleconverter for the 400. I just want a native more reach, 600, 800, something like that. I've been having a really tough time between the pros and the cons of these lenses. I love the things that were keeping this as a contender for me are it's very similar to my 1-400 in size and weight. It is a little bit heavier, but not much. Another side note, I said it in the other review that I did of this, but I love the tripod collar on this. It's Arca Swiss compatible and it's a little bit bigger for your hand. So just carrying that around, that has no bearing on the actual review or comparison to these two. I just wanted to throw that out there. But this being so similar to my 1-400 in size and weight and all of that, I know that I can handle it. I know that I can handle the weight. Even walking around carrying this thing on my R5 or my R6, and even with it zooming out, I don't have a problem with that. And I do love the extra 200mm reach from my 1-400. I also really enjoy the fact that this lens is weather sealed, and I have put that to the test back east when I had it before. In the rain and out here in the dust and all of that, it is weather sealed. I love it. That is one of the biggest contenders for me still wanting this lens. The fact that I get 200mm more than my 400 and the fact that it's weather sealed. I also love the fact that this is a zoom. So being more than just a wildlife photographer, I also do landscape, and having the ability to back out and do more environmental portraits of the animal or the wildlife that I'm shooting, or just to have the ability to back out and get a nice landscape at 150 versus 600. So having the zoom, very handy. So on the note of the zoom, but this doesn't have that much of a problem because for one, 600 is slightly wider than 800, and for two, I have a zoom. So if I can't find it, I can back out and then zoom in, and that's very nice. Another reason why I thought I would struggle is that with my choice between these two is that for an all-in-one, right, I want something, we want the best of both worlds. It's kind of in our nature these days. We're all so spoiled and with technology and all this. We want the best of both worlds. I want the longest glass possible. I want a zoom. I want the fastest aperture possible. I want it all, right? And we just can't have it all. Physics says no, you can't have all that in one thing. But I want as close as I can get. I want to minimize my compromises. And with something like that, that's definitely possible in that I have my zoom. It's very sharp at 600. I'm not worried about sharpness. I have my faster aperture of 6.3, which is much better than f11. And It's only marginally heavier, comparatively speaking. It's about 1.5 pounds heavier than the 800, which depends on who you are and what you feel like doing. That's not much in the grand scheme of big white lenses or big wildlife lenses.
Now, what is initially said is this lens is really sharp, and it's not just him. There's a lot of YouTubers that have said this. The thing is, I've spent a lot of time over the past month reviewing that particular lens and comparing it to this one here. So here we have the Sigma 150-600 contemporary lens. So I've actually tested these, Brent, and I actually tested the Tamron quite extensively. I bought it off Amazon. I got this from Amazon as well, and I tested them side by side. Now, while you're absolutely correct, weather sealing is important. The Sigma lens that I've got here doesn't have a lot of weather sealing at the front end here, but it has a little bit on the back end. It's really up to you, people's interpretation, which they think they want to go for in terms of weather sealing. And there's no denying that the Tamron is a good lens in terms of weather seal.
So this has a lot going for it, and the fact that I can throw the teleconverter on, which I did rent and I did try out, and that 1.4 teleconverter that Tamron made, they made for this lens, so it works well. It will put me at 840mm at f9, which is still 2/3 of a stop faster than the f11. And on paper, that all sounds really good, but then when you get out into real world use, you have to take all of these things into consideration. Is the weight of this eventually going to bother you? It eventually does bother me when compared to this. Now, if this is all I had, then I will deal with it absolutely.
However, I do want to address a few things that he's said in this video, where he's talked about the minimum focus. Now, the minimum focus is 2.2 meters in metric terms. Here in the UK, we use metric, you see. And also he's addressed quite a long focal length on the RF 800mm lens. But he also said the Canon lens, which I've got here, the Canon 100-400 Mark II L lens, has a similar minimum focus. That's not actually true, Brent. It's actually 98 centimeters with this, just under 1 meter. So that's actually half the distance that the Tamron needs to focus. So the Canon, in that respect, is a lot better at minimum focus. Because, you know, for example, my Sigma lens that we've got here, minimum focus is 2.8 meters. The sport version of this is 2.6 meters. The Tamron lens you're talking about is 2.2 meters, and the previous version, the G1 lens version of it, came out, you know, some years ago. That was 2.7 meters. So those are your minimum focuses. Now, we talked about extenders. Sure, I have the Canon 2X extender. It works quite well, if I'm honest with you. It's quite slow, but when it comes to the 1.4, these are all Mark IIIs. This is really nice and does a good job, and it's quite sharp. And obviously I've got the Sigma version here, which is, in my opinion, works better with the Sigma lens, because it's sharper in the corners rather than use the Canon extender. I've done some videos on that. If you want to check those videos out, have a look at those. But yeah, I found the TC-1401 1.4 extender, or teleconverter as Sigma call it, is really nice. But he addressed something in this video that I thought was very interesting to understand, that he actually says the Tamron lens is sharp. It's not sharp, I'll be honest with you. And it's not just me saying this. There's many people out there who've actually said my lens is not sharp, I can't get sharp images out of it. They've sent it to Tamron, it's come back, a few minor adjustments, but in the essence it's still the same lens that they sent in, and it's not very sharp. Now, I've done a lot of videos recently, and please have a look at those. I'll put one of them in the description box if you want to check it out in terms of image quality. But what I found was the Sigma was sharper than the Tamron, for definite. Probably on par of about 5% sharper. Then when I compared the Canon with the 1.4, which brings us up to about 560mm, a shade a little bit softer than say the Sigma one. But when it came to the Tamron lens, it was even worse than the Canon with the 1.4. So I wanted to address this video and say I found that to be not the case. Now there's a lot of YouTubers who've looked at the Tamron lens. TobyRec.tv comes to mind, and I think there's others on YouTube as well that have said the Tamron lens is sharper than the Sigma. Well, I'm sorry, but I've just done 4 weeks of testing, and I'll address focus speed in a minute, but I've literally tested the hell out of the Tamron 150-600 G2 lens, and I have found it at 600mm a disappointment. It is quite soft, and to be honest with you, I think the older lens was sharper, you know, at 600mm. When it comes to the VC, or the optical stabilizer as Sigma call it on this lens, I actually found the Tamron better. It actually rated at 4.5 stops when you use, I think it's mode 3. This is rated at 4 stops, so not quite as good. And I also found this to be not as effective at lower shutter speeds, such as 30th of a second. I was getting some camera shake. I was able to get as low as 1/8 of a second on the Tamron 150-600 G2 lens. So it is a superior lens in terms of the stabilizer, or optical stabilizer as Sigma call it, or the image stabilizer as Canon call it. You know, lots of camera companies have different names for it, but it's the same thing, it's a stabilizer. So, you know, I did find the Tamron lens brilliant for stabilizing subjects in your viewfinder, as well as taking pictures. You can customize it using the Tamron tapping console. The same is true with the Sigma. I can get the Sigma dock and customize this. I thought this was superior though in terms of customization, because I have a custom mode switch here that allows me to save settings into C2 and C1 clicks of the button, which makes it a better lens in my opinion, and more customizable than the Tamron lens. Now I'm not going to criticise Brent here. Brent Halls is called, his YouTube channel, check it out. In terms of what he's saying, you know, in regards to the Tamron lens, that's his opinion and he's entitled to that. But I've done so many tests recently where I've tested test charts, I've tested the stabilizers, I've tested real world examples, real world imagery. I've done Star Trek models where I've actually literally been fairly close, and I haven't been able to achieve super tack sharp images with the Tamron lens. It was a bit of a letdown. I initially thought the Sigma wasn't that sharp until I redid my tests. Sometimes we all make mistakes regarding our testing methodologies, and sometimes I make mistakes, and I'm sure you guys out there have made many mistakes as well. Photography is all about learning things, but where Brent goes on to talk about the Tamron lens being the perfect all-round lens for him, obviously each lens isn't perfect. You know, this is 5.6, you know, I'd prefer it to be 2.8, and at some point I want to get the 300 Canon 2.8 lens at some point when I can afford it. But obviously these big white lenses, obviously Brent's talking about big white lenses in his video, where they're expensive and you have to save up for a very long time to afford them, and obviously he's managed to come up with the funds to pay for the R6 and R7 cameras, and good on him for getting those cameras, and I hope they do well for you, Brent. But I just wanted to say in this video where you know, I don't completely agree with everything he's saying, but I do appreciate he's got a good point of view and he likes his Tamron lens. In regards to the RF 800 F11, like he said in his videos, is a dark aperture, and like he's happy with his Tamron lens, I'm happy with my Sigma lens. I've owned this before. I've also reviewed the sport version of this, and including the G1 version as well. Many years ago when it first came out. I was actually the first person on YouTube to get all 3 lenses, the Tamron, the Sigma, the 2 Sigmas, and review them side by side and compare them to each other until certain YouTubers started copying me, and then obviously they got ranked higher in the search results than I did. So in effect they sort of copied my idea really. I wasn't happy about that, but that's life, innit? But yeah, you know, all apertures are not perfect. This is 6.3 at the long end, and obviously I prefer to use a f8 whenever possible. There is one thing he's not talked about. I've got the EOS 90D on here, which effectively changes this to 960mm. Now it is a crop sensor camera, so we are magnifying the centre of the lens, which is the sharpest point of the lens. And what I found was, using APS-C with this lens, it was alright at f6.3, but after f8 or f16 I found there was a bit of diffraction coming into it, so I didn't like using it on APS-C, to be honest with you. So you're always better using a full frame lens on a full frame camera. Yes, you can use APS-C at a pinch, but the problem is because all the pixels are tightly spaced in there. So this is a 33 megapixel sensor, you see, so obviously it is superior to the R6 in that respect, and I can crop it quite a bit. The thing is, what I have noticed is when you start cropping APS-C sensors, you don't get sharp results. Mainly because this lens is designed for full frame, so it may not be sharp enough. The optics might not be sharp enough for APS-C in general. I think a lot of people forget about that. And when I refer to effective focal length increased to 960mm, I mean the angle of view is equivalent to that. I don't mean the lens has suddenly become a 960mm lens. There's a lot of people that complain about me using that terminology, but to be honest with you, that's what Sigmas call it, an increase in effective focal length, and that's why I say that. So I just want to say, I was intrigued to watch your video, Brent, and I do disagree with what you've said. But if you have any sort of comments to make on my video, please let me know. I'm using a little bit of your video here. I do apologise if you feel that I'm infringing on your copyright. If that's the case, let me know, and hopefully we can come to some sort of agreement. But I've done this just to show everyone what you've said, and I just want to give you my take on that. But you know, keep doing the good content. For me, the RF800 is a good lens, and the thing is that f8's aperture is a sticking point for a lot of people. The thing is, I have a lot of EF mount cameras. I've got the 90D, the 7D Mark II. I did have the 80D until recently, and they're all EF mount. So the RF800 lens, a lot of what I've said is fair cop, and the problem with the f11 aperture is it's very dark. So like in the UK where we get a lot of overcast days, f11 might be too much in a lot of circumstances. In summertime it's not going to be an issue unless you go into a dark forest area, and that's why you need like a 2.8 aperture lens. Like I've got the 70-200 2.8. I'm looking at a 300 2.8 as well at some point. But I just want to say that f11 is a very dark aperture, and because you can't change it as well, it means you can't get it down to, like you say, f22, f32, if you want to try and get some more depth of field into your shots. But the fact you can't open that aperture out up a bit more and let more light in is also a bit of a bummer as well. So Brent, you talked about using an extender. Obviously Tamron have their own version. Incidentally, I did think it was a bit overpriced when I looked at it. We've got the Sigma equivalent here, the TC-1401. I got this off eBay actually for about £130, so quite cheap. I did feel that when I put extenders on these lenses, I did feel it got a bit soft and autofocus wasn't that quick. So I agree with you on that point, where I don't think using the 150-600 lenses with extenders is a good idea. But just for the fun of it, just for the hell of it, I tested it out with this, the 2x Mark III extender, the Canon one, giving me 1200mm, and that is amazing. I was recently watching a video today, B&H did, talking about the 5.6 Canon 1200mm lens, and that was stupid size wise, but looked amazing. It looked like a bazooka, really. So I just wanted to do a quick video really, just to say, you know, there's a few things I agree with you and a few things I don't. For me, I've obviously tested all three: Sigma, Canon and the Tamron that you've got in your hand here, and I just felt that the Tamron was soft. And I also tested it on my EOS R for focus speed. Now if you check my channel, I've done a lot of focus speed videos recently on the EOS R. Now a lot of people have said the EOS R is a slow camera and its focus system isn't that super fast. But what I found was, when I used the Sigma lens, focus was relatively quick. When I'd use that Tamron lens you're holding there, focus from minimum focus to say subject matter that might have been 4 meters away took about 3 seconds for focus acquisition, which is unreasonable and totally rubbish, and that's why I ultimately sent the lens back. I just thought focus was too slow, too rubbish, and I can't deal with that sort of focus speed on my EOS R. It may be different on the R6 or R5, maybe Brent, you can tell me if there was a difference in those two cameras, because I'm contemplating looking at purchasing the R6 at some point, because I'm actually filming on the EOS R at the moment and I do really love this camera. I didn't think I would, because I've always used SLRs for many years, and I always felt an optical viewfinder is always better than a digital one. But you know, I'm changing my mind on that because it's so useful. Because if I want to do video, I don't have to get some sort of viewfinder cup thing that I have to put on the back of the display so I can, you know, do some video. I can actually look through the viewfinder now, and when it's a sunny day, you get a lot of reflections on the LCD screens and you can't see what's going on. So the LCD, the digital ones, are fantastic for that, and you know, I certainly would recommend that if anyone wants to do video and doesn't want to deal with LCD glare from the sun. A mirrorless camera is the way to go, because then you don't need to buy any sort of viewfinder that you attach to the LCD screen. So yeah, that's the main sticking point for the Tamron lens. The focus speed was terrible, and there is a woman who has said that she just couldn't get sharp images. Now there's a video on YouTube that says my Tamron lens is terrible, I believe, and let's just see what she has to say about her lens.
Hi folks, Anne Mckinnell here. So I just bought this beast of a lens. It's a 150-600mm Tamron lens that I'm planning on using for wildlife photography. And I brought it out here this morning to the estuary to photograph some birds and some deer that were in the estuary, and it's terrible. All of the photos that I took are horribly out of focus. So there are lots of things that can go wrong that can cause your photos to be out of focus, and I wouldn't go blaming the lens first thing normally. But I'm pretty confident, I've been doing this for a while, I'm pretty confident that my camera settings are good and my technique is good, and so I think the problem here is in fact the lens. So what I'm going to do to try to solve this situation is to calibrate the lens. Now, one would hope that you buy a brand new lens and spend $1,000, that you could put it on your camera and everything would be fine, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't, and you kind of have to calibrate your lens to work with your camera.
You've just seen Anne Mckinnell talk about her Tamron lens being really soft, and she said she sent it back to Tamron, they sent her another one, and it still did the same thing. And ultimately she ended up getting rid of that and getting, I believe it was a Mark 1 Canon 500 f4L lens, and I believe she's really happy with that. So and I hope you're really happy with that lens, and I hope it does you a good job. The reason I'm using your example is I want to demonstrate to Brent what you've said. I've spent the past month doing extensive tests, and like Anne, I found that the Tamron lens is pretty poor at 600mm, especially when I compare it to my Sigma 150-600 contemporary lens. Now, I appreciate that Anne hasn't actually tried this lens, and I would recommend you do so, because I do think it's a superior lens. On my EOS R, it's twice as fast in terms of autofocus. Obviously it can't focus quite as close because it's got a minimum focus of 2.8 meters instead of the 2.2 that the Tamron has. But you don't buy these lenses for minimum focus, do you? You buy them for long distance. So this is a superior lens. I really like it. I've owned it before. Main reason I sold it was so I could afford this, which is the Canon 100-400 Mark IIL lens. This is a lens that most people want. At the moment Canon's selling this for a lot of money, so they have increased the price by about £400 in my opinion. Not sure why. But yeah, basically Anne is saying the lens is soft, and I agree with her. I've done the tests. Autofocus performance is slow. I've done the tests. I'm just not happy with the Tamron at all. And to top it all off, I sent an email to Tamron. They took 4 weeks to reply, and their reply was abysmal. You know, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot because I run a YouTube channel, and it's possible they may decide never to loan me equipment ever because of this video. But I think it's important that I mention why I sent the Tamron back and I held on to the Sigma. Even though I preferred the Tamron for its weather sealing, its focus ring was better and nicer to use. It felt higher grade, higher quality. I really liked it. It had a better lens hood. It had all the bells and whistles that I thought this lens was going to be a keeper of a lens for me. And as a matter of course, I ordered the Sigma again and loaded it onto my credit card. So obviously I owe quite a bit of money. But then when I started testing the Tamron, I thought, I can't have this anymore, I don't like it. The focus is half the speed on my EOS R. It may be different on an R6 or R5, but it's a far superior lens in image quality and focus speed. This blows the Tamron out of the water. It's actually superior at 600mm than this lens is. Now, a lot of people talk about the Canon 100-400 Mark IIL lens being as sharp as hell, and it is at 400mm. But when you upscale this to 600mm, the Sigma beats this. Not by much, a tiny little amount, but it still beats it. So that's why I've got the Sigma lens as well. I thought it'd be beneficial to have both, and I am contemplating, based on Brent's video, looking at the 800 F11. Yes, I've said that it's a dark aperture in a previous overview video I did about a year ago, and I do still stand by that, where I think the aperture is very dark. But saying that, I still think it's a useful aperture in bright sunlight. In dark sunlight, not so. And certainly mirrorless cameras obviously can focus. I even tested a lens recently at f22, and it still was able to autofocus, which is amazing, really. You know, mirrorless cameras have come a long way, you know, since the EOS R came out. So, you know, thanks to Brent Halls' video, I certainly will be considering the R6 at some point. It's a lot of money to fork out. Maybe I can pay for it monthly rather than fork out for it all in one go. If you still don't want to listen to me or listen to Anne in regards to what they said about the Tamron lens, that's fine. You're entitled to your own opinion. And if you do want to buy the Tamron lens, I believe Amazon are doing like a pay monthly plan where you can pay for it, like £89 a month if you really want to go for that. No doubt they might be doing similar deals for the Sigma lenses, you know, I don't know. You'll have to check Amazon out for that. Hope this video was informative. Thank you, Brent, for doing this video that you've done on your thoughts regarding the R6, the R5, the RF800, the Tamron 150-600. You did mention briefly using an extender, and you said you didn't like it, it didn't perform very well. I would concur with that. At a pinch, and if you got nothing else on you, yeah, I would recommend using that. But I think there's something you need to take away, guys. Whenever you're going out to take pictures, getting closer improves your lens dramatically, makes it better. The closer you can get to your subject matter, providing it's not too close, because you've got to remember your minimum focus, that will serve you better than having a really long lens. Because there's something a lot of photographers don't mention. There's a lot of things that photographers don't talk about, and that's regarding the atmosphere, the elements within the atmosphere. During a hot day in the summer, have you ever noticed there's like a heat wave effect going off? That's the atmosphere, and these lenses can't cope with that. So that's why you have to get closer to your subject, because if you don't, you get that atmospheric heat wave effect in your images, and you don't want that. Or alternatively, the best time to go out in the summer, for example, is in the morning or in the evening when the temperatures have come down and you don't see that heat wave as much. Or photographing the winter, or spring for that matter. Anyway, I hope this video was a bit informative on what I'm talking about. Again, I've done so many videos. I've got about 43 videos that I've done in the past month, all about image quality of the Canon, the Sigma and the Tamron. I've looked at focus speed, I've looked at AF speed, I've looked at build quality. Check those videos out, because they will make or give you a general idea on how these lenses perform on different cameras. I've also tested these cameras on the 90D and the 7D Mark II. If you don't own the fancy mirrorless cameras, those tests will be beneficial for you to get an idea, gauge the focus speed and the image quality that's coming out of those cameras as well. Anyway, hope this video was informative. Brent Hall, thank you for uploading that video. Hope I didn't ramble too much in this video. Let me know what your thoughts. If you've got any concerns regarding me using any of your footage, let me know. As well as same being Anne Mckinnell. The reason I decided to montage your clips into my video is I want to give my audience a bit of sense of where I'm coming from, and referencing your videos as well.